Hello everybody, I am RJ Smith, and this is Crazy News Reacts, where I scour news sources for the stupidest, strangest, craziest news of the day. Welcome aboard.
It's not the first time that I'm happy. It's not the first time I feel good. But it's been a while since that happened, knock on wood. I try to stay cool on the surface.
You do the crime, you do the time.
But when people are released from prison, it marks the start of new hardships impacting local families and communities.
Today, I've got a story about a prison system that charges its inmates $50 a day. I'm not kidding you. Everyone, by now in their life, has heard or seen a police show where they give the criminal defendant their rights. It's called reading them their rights. Now look right here. It says, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. So far, so good, right? You have the right to speak to an attorney and to have an attorney present during any questioning. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be provided to you at the government's expense. That is the Miranda warning that we all know and love. Did you know that some states are changing it? Look at this. There's one very important change here. The Sixth Amendment, the right of counsel, is what we're talking about here. Now, as I read you, in the original Miranda warning, it says they will provide a lawyer to you at no cost or at the government's cost. Well, nowadays, here's what they read. The Sixth Amendment guarantees a criminal defendant the right to have a lawyer during questioning or during legal proceedings. And that right is not dependent on the defendant's ability to pay, right? Makes sense, because poor people are protected under this Fifth and Sixth Amendment as well. If a defendant cannot afford a lawyer, the government is required to provide one. Notice what's missing there? That the government will pay for the lawyer, or a lawyer will be presented to you at the cost of the government. Mysteriously has disappeared from most police bureaus' Miranda rights card. So the U.S. Supreme Court provided an attorney, and if person was indigent, they would provide the attorney at the government's expense. That's what's in the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. Now it's they will provide an attorney, but the part where at the government's expense has been taken out. How are people supposed to pay back states for a public defender? And in case you haven't heard, public defenders are really prosecutors. They're not trying to get you off. They're just trying to get through their huge caseload. But now apparently providing a lawyer at government's expense, no longer. They will bill you later. And even though you're poor, they will put it on your credit report and they will hound you for the rest of your life. Interesting.
The state of Florida had what is called an exemption from disqualification. And they told me that you are not eligible because you owe over $127,000 for an incarceration fee from the state of Florida.
What was your reaction?
I cried. I literally felt like my entire past just punched me in the face. When I was 13, my parents split up, so it caused, a lot of dysfunction, a lot of misdirection in the household. So I found a boyfriend that unfortunately got me hooked on opiates, snorting them, smoking them, and then eventually, I started shooting them.
And this was all while you were a teenager?
Yes.
I'm not one to blame someone else for my problems. This lady spent time in prison. She blames her boyfriend for getting her hooked on drugs. Nearly impossible. You have to choose to do drugs, right? You're not forced into it. So blaming the boyfriend is bullshit. But the story is incredible. When released from a Florida prison, she received a bill for $127,000 for the cost of housing her in the prison against her will. And if you think Florida's weird on this, more than 43 states have some form of charging inmates for their incarceration. Medical copays, charges for booking, taking your photo, collecting your DNA to put in their criminal data system, and even for a public defender. When Miranda states a lawyer will be provided to you at no cost. Well, that's not true anymore, is it?
After turning 18, Hoffman was charged with a third-degree felony.
I had pawned something that, was stolen.
Then a burglary charge.
Both of those charges are drug influenced. Ever since, 10 years ago, I've never caught another charge. I told him, I said, listen, Your Honor, you keep putting me on the streets, I'm going to die. I need help.
Hoffman was sentenced to the Phoenix house for a year, but did not complete the program.
The director kicked me out.
Because of that, the judge sentenced Hoffman to 7 years in prison. She served 10 months. The judge allowing her to participate in a youth offender boot camp.
This lady makes a lot of excuses. She told the judge while in jail that if he let her out, she was going to die. I don't buy that for 1 second. And she was sentenced to a drug program. And surprise, she walked away. She doesn't take any ownership for what she did. But still, over 10 million felons in our country owe more than $50 billion for the cost of their incarceration. It's simply a financial sentence that poor people can't pay. These are people who did drugs or shoplifted or robbed or whatever to live, to eat, to survive. How are they going to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars for being in prison? It just doesn't make any sense.
I had paid everything off. I petitioned the courts to get off of probation. He clapped for me and said, you above anybody deserve this. Congratulations, Miss Hoffman. I've taken pictures with him, given him a hug, and he wrote me a handwritten Christmas card telling me he knew I could do it. I finally felt like, the book was closed. Your redemption is complete.
Within 3 years, when applying for that exemption to work in case management, her dream job, Hoffman found out that she, like thousands of others, still owes the state $50 a day for the 7 years of her original sentence, $127,750.
This is where I say, holy freaking shit, Batman. That's a lot of dough. It used to be that anyone with a felony on their record, no matter whether it's 20, 30 years ago, found it very hard to get a job. And it's still like that. Everybody does background checks. So if you've ever been to prison, most likely you're going to have a hard time getting a job. And that only adds to people going back because they have to eat. And the judge took away years from her life to put her away. I get it, she did a crime, then put her through a diversion program, and then stood up and applauded when she completed it. Now, this does happen. But I want you to think about the horrid conditions in prison. Disgusting and spoiled food, meals that taste like cardboard, no meat ever, and charging people for doctor visits inside prison. Holy shit, these doctors are like on the bottom of the barrel. They are not good at all, and sometimes they hurt you more than they're supposed to help you. So, charging people for that. Doctors who have been basically thrown out of society themselves have to find jobs in prisons. Man.
Cell that I didn't occupy, I felt so tricked and so fooled. There is no ladder with them that will ever truly allow you to be a second chance anything. There isn't. And they make sure of it.
Hoffman's grandmother, Linda, helped pay off what she said was thousands of dollars in other fines and fees.
We thought everything was taken care of. I must not understand it right. I've probably got this wrong, but no, I didn't.
Hoffman hired an attorney in an attempt to modify her incarceration costs to the 10 months she served. The judge denied the motion.
So let me break this down for you. This lady was charged $120-something thousand for a prison cell she did not occupy. States now are going to a fee-based system where if you are sentenced to 1 year, you are charged for 1 year. Sentenced to 10 years, you are charged for 10 years. Whether or not you spend time in that actual cell doesn't matter. You get the charge no matter what. So we've gotten into a circumstance where prisons are double booking, basically. Someone who gets out on parole still has to pay for the remainder of the sentence of that cell, even while new people have come into prison and are occupying it and they're being paid, and so forth and so on. The ball just keeps rolling. This poor woman, the judge and the court staff stood up and clapped when she did everything she was supposed to do, followed all of the conditions the court put on it. But when she went back to the court to try to get some relief from these fees, the judge, sorry, not going to do that. You still have to pay. Crazy, but it happens. You know, a few years back, Florida prisons went on strike over this very issue, and nothing changed, other than a lot of people going to the hole or solitary confinement for a very long time for protesting. And Florida is one of just 5 states that don't pay inmates for work. Usually, back in the day in prisons, you'd get paid like 48 cents a day, to make license plates or whatever. That still goes on. But 45 states have outlawed that because it makes no sense, right? But Florida, no, pay.
A court may not modify a legal sentence imposed by it more than 60 days after the imposition. And incarceration costs are based upon the length of the sentence imposed by the court at the time of sentencing.
You are imposing something that I can't pay off in a lifetime. So I'm stuck.
How is this possible?
We think it's unconstitutional.
Lisa Foster, co-executive director of the Fines and Fees Justice Center based in Washington, D.C.,
Florida charges a lot of fines and fees
says it violates the excessive fines clause
because it's not proportionate either to the underlying offense or to a person's financial circumstances. In Shelby's case, what happens is she's saddled with over $120,000 of debt to the state of Florida that is a life sentence.
I have a family now. I have a daughter, a wonderful husband. I have all of these accomplishments that I have worked so hard to maintain. And to not be given the opportunity to have a realistic, reasonable, obtainable goal to rectify all of that, that is why this is important.
Since 2019, Illinois and New Hampshire have repealed their pay-to-stay laws for state prisons. Here in Florida last session, the Fines and Fees Justice Center worked with lawmakers on a bill that would have allowed judges to do an ability to pay assessment when imposing fines and fees. It failed.
Poor girl. All she wants to do is get on with her life, become a nurse, but Florida does not allow you to do that unless you have completed your sentence and had your rights restored. For instance, I am 25 years from my felony, but I can't vote for the rest of my life. How is that possible? And how could that affect federal voting? Each state determines whether or not you can vote, and each state determines whether or not you're going to pay for your incarceration. It is a horrible system. It puts unnecessary pressure on people who have just served time in a prison and are just trying to get their life back in order. If you won't allow them to pursue their dreams and their aspirations, why would they even bother? And that's the problem. Many people are being billed right back into prison. Thanks for hanging out with me today. You know who I am. Please like and subscribe. And hey, if you feel it in your heart, do what? Share it with your friends and family. The algorithm loves it when you make comments and hit that like button. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.